Fuck, I had the power. I just pulled it off. Let's make that professional. I really hate live demonstrations of analog stuff. It's always not working. Okay, so that's what we found out back then. That's what we published, and you might have seen the movie online with the TomTom device showing whether you voted conservative or not. Basically, it was based on that attack. You had a radio scanner, very simple scanner, and a frequency counter, and that was basically it. So, but we were in Germany, and we didn't have to fight the Dutch authorities, we had to fight the German authorities. And in Germany, the voting machines were certified by the Physikalisch-Technische Bundesanstalt, PTB. And they were the guys basically responsible for checking that everything's okay. Like, reading the source code, and making sure that the things behave like they should. And after we came up with our results, and we published the results, they kept saying, no, the enabled machines, the German ones are different, and they don't have any electromagnetic radiation. Yeah, sure. And the interesting thing is the Dutch authority for checking voting computers, the TNO, they had a list of differences between the Dutch machine and the German machine, because the German machines were usable for Dutch elections. And that list was very short, and it said things like the stem knob is green and not red, and et cetera, so small things. Nothing really that said anything about extra Tempest shielding or something. So we couldn't verify it back then. So it was left in the open. But we wrote a report based on what we learned by playing with the machine, and that was presented to the German Supreme Court, the Bundesverfassungsgericht. And those are really wise guys. They essentially ruled that it's totally, perfectly okay to use voting computers as long as your grandma can verify that every vote was counted correctly. In other words, you can't. That's okay. So basically, we got rid of the problem for now. They attempt to come back with things like adding a paper trail to the machine and stupid things. And there are also other countries that still use voting machines, and this was a left open issue. And this year, we got an offer from a small village near Berlin that we could perform some measurements with their voting computers. And we picked it up. So now we're again at the TEMPEST topic. So what's TEMPEST? It's not an acronym for something, even if some people claim that. It's a code name of an NSA project that dealt with electromagnetic emanation. And it's been known to exist as a phenomenon at least since the 40s. The NSA project started in the 60s, so that's all very, very old stuff. And the first publication about TEMPEST was by Wim van Eck in 1985. That's why TEMPEST is also known as Van Eck radiation. What he described, though, was electromagnetic radiation from an analog monitor. And that's pretty easy to pick up. What you have to do is, monitor writes beam from left to right and up to down. You probably all know that. So you have a current running through the wire going through your CRT, where the current changes according to the lightness of the pixel, and that from left to right. And same for the actual beam in there. It generates a pretty strong field. And as we all know, the electromagnetic wave is proportional to the change in the field. I'm coming back to that later. So essentially what you do is you put a wet clothes line into the air and attach an amplifier. then put a capacitor there for integration, and then you generate vertical and horizontal sync artificially, and put that onto a monitor again. And you just have, the moment where you hit the right horizontal and vertical frequencies, you see the analog monitor image on your next analog monitor. And for reasons that are entirely unclear to me, nobody until very recently published about digital Tempest. So the analog monitor thing, it has been demonstrated on the CCC, it has been demonstrated on DEF CON, pretty much public knowledge. But not many people talked about digital signals, which is interesting because you can commercially buy devices that do Tempest analysis for serial lines, for printers, off the shelf. The first publication I could find about digital emanations was from the year 2006 by two Chinese guys, and it was published at the robotics conference. Okay, it saved me from, trying to work out all the formulas myself. I attempted, but I'm not that good at math, but yeah, those guys are a bit better than me. So this is what they're writing about the general equation for the electromagnetic field, which, you don't have to understand it. I don't understand it either completely, but the interesting thing is that you have that I, which is a function of omega. That means the current in your wire is a function of here of the angular velocity, and so the electric and magnetic field is in proportional to the frequency of the signal. Now you can take the Fourier transformation of that to get the time domain signal strength. That's the electric field, magnetic field can derive from that, and so the thing you need to understand is that here is a derivative. You have your I of some time variant signal, so the current running through your wire, that depends on the time, and you take the differential of that, and that's your electromagnetic wave, essentially. The interesting thing is when you think electromagnetic wave, you think about some oscillation and signals and sinus and everything, but we are in digital domain here because, this is not a CRT monitor on that device. That's why I'm thinking about digital signals. It's an LCD device, and LCD devices work by being driven by digital signals. You have rows and columns, and one row is driven at the same time. All the columns are driven or not, depending on whether you have a white or black pixel. So essentially what you see is emanation of from digital signals. And if you look at that, the derivative of a rectangular signal, as everybody knows, mathematicians says it's a singularity, it doesn't exist. The signal processing guys say it's a Dirac impulse, and mathematicians have worked long and hard to understand what a Dirac impulse actually is in mathematical terms, but it's convenient to use. And so if you look at the differential of a rectangular signal, it spikes. It spikes up, spikes down. Now, when we have real-world lines that transfer current, they have a capacity and they have an inductance. So essentially, they form a low-pass filter. So in the real world, you get a signal like the one on the left. So on the left is the current running through our wire, and it changes from 0 to 1 and from 1 to 0. And you see the little ripples at the end, and you see that the edge has a slope. It's not directly vertical. So the energy of that is obviously limited. And to the right, you see the electromagnetic field generated by that, an idealized version. So of course you have transmission effects, etc., etc. But this is what to expect on the input of your receiver when you try to pick up digital signals. Now you can take that and do a frequency transformation on that. So if you take the FFT of a Dirac impulse, what you get is that it's spread across all frequencies. It's on all frequencies at the same time. But we have a signal that's essentially a